At this point, our class here, our blueprint, is doing great. Right? We have the properties, instance variables or fields. We have actions or behaviors, right? This here, I'm going to just make sure that we have different ways of identifying this, behaviors and such, right? For my British folks, I know you put a U there, but in America we say behaviors without the U. Very good. So actions and behaviors or methods that we have, all these things are here. But we have vulnerabilities here. Meaning, the idea of having our class, our entity in this case, is that we want to make sure that this entity, that is a class, is as secure as possible. Imagine that we are creating a bigger system. Okay, this is just a part of a bigger system. And there's about 20 or 100 classes that are created in this bigger system. Obviously, these classes have to interact with each other in order to create that system. Makes sense. Now, the problem that we may end up having here is that somebody in our team, or us, a later time, somebody creates a class and we have to use that class for something in our big system that we're creating. Somebody creates a piece of code that goes and accesses, let's say, the microphone class model directly, as we saw here, for instance, right? We said here, microphone, that model, and we can add something to our microphone, right? In fact, this microphone, that model, we can still do it even though we have now instantiated it all inside of our constructor. In fact, if I come down here and uncomment this out, notice that the model that we added inside of our constructor is going to be override by the model that we added by accessing the microphone, that model, directly as such. So in fact, if I save this and run, notice what's going to happen. Notice that the model for Blue Yeti is now 133543 as used to be before. It's no longer this 364663. Now, in this example here, it is of course okay because we're just learning about object-oriented programming, we're learning about classes and objects and so forth. But there's a bigger vulnerability here which we must talk about, we must fix. That's when we talk about access modifiers. Again, the whole idea around classes is that we want to create this entity. Now, this entity has to work on its own and only expose what needs to be exposed outside of this entity. If you think of a car, if you're not a mechanic, a car is just a method of transportation, meaning you just take a car, you get in the car, start a car, and go where you want to go, right? However, a car is not just something that you sit on and turn it on and go somewhere, right? There's more to a car than what the eye meets, meaning a car has things under the hood that you and I, who just want to drive a car, don't need to know about it. However, the car exposes certain things to us, meaning we can turn on the keys, right? The engine will start, and we can use the clutch, and we can use everything else so that we can start moving. The car can start moving, taking us to places. Does that make sense? So when we think of a car, we don't think about the internals because we think of it as this black box that we don't really care to know really what it's inside, as long as the car works. If you were to ask a mechanic about what a car is, of course, the dialogue will be different because a mechanic now looks into the internals of what a car is. Okay? Now, if you think of this black box in this analogy of a car, if this black box would actually let anybody, meaning you wake up in the morning, want to go to work, get in the car, and all of a sudden you turn on the key, and all of a sudden there's a prompt that says, oh, you have to open the hood of the car and look into the transmission in order for you to get to work today. That would not be good. Even if you were a mechanic, this easy access to the transmission, as we say here, it would not be a good thing, right? Because if I don't know anything about mechanics, if I don't know anything, I can just do something wrong and then I destroy everything, right? This analogy I'm giving you of the car is the same concept, but we have to think in terms of our classes. If you think in those terms, you will see that this object-oriented programming paradigm is not as hard as it may seem at first. Okay, so we need to defend this entity here, this black box. At this point, it's not well defended. It's not secure because, as you see, any time that we want, I can just go and say microphone.model and change it. Imagine that this is part of a bigger project, as I said before, and the changing of the model, like we did here, so easily, it would just create a huge pandemonium around the whole system. Or you would actually destroy the whole system just because I let this model or any other instance variable unsecure, as we did here. All right. So Java allows us to actually secure everything inside of our classes. And to do so, we will have to learn a little bit about access modifiers. Okay, to secure our class here, what we need to do is add a private to all properties here. So private. All right, so the moment you do that, something is going to happen. Save this. Go to my class. Now we have a problem here, right? Aha, it says microphone.model cannot be accessed. Why? Because it is private. So anything that doesn't have a modifier to it, in this case here, didn't have anything, that means it was public, meaning anybody could access it. The moment we put private, now we can't just access this way, which is good for the reasons that I've explained before. All right. Now, how do we access then those variables? Because there will be times when we want to set those variables up instead of just always having to do this way, right? Because this doesn't give us a lot of flexibility, having to always create a class and add things. We want to be able to come down at a later time and change things, but in the right way, okay? So to do that, that's when we look at what we call getters and setters. So now what we're saying is that, okay, you cannot access my instance variables or property fields directly because you may end up doing things that I don't want you to do, that will destroy the whole system, right? The credibility of our system here. But we still need to access those. How do we do that? Well, Java says, well, I'll give you the access to getters and setters so you can set things up just like we did with our microphone constructor here. Okay, and you can get those values as well if you need them. Now, instead of setting things up saying like we did before here, microphone.model is equal to something, we cannot do this because we are directly infringing on the instance variable, which is a huge no-no. Hence, we put all of them in private. So from now on, your instance variables should always be private unless you have other reasons not to have them private. So that every time you want to tinker around here, it has to go through proper channels. In this case, you have to have getters and setters. How do we create getters and setters? Well, getters and setters, easily, you can also do this Command N, and voila, you have getter and setter. So if you click that, and then you can add, just like we did before, name, color, model, to have getters and setters for them. Hit enter, now voila. You say public string get name, returns name. There's set name here, this, that name, we're setting the name. Remember, we have this, that name again because we don't want to end up with a problem with the string name parameter that we are passing here. All right, so this, that name, meaning this object, get the name property, you can see it's even highlighted, and set it to whatever we're passing when we set the name. And also the same thing, get color, set color, and so get model and set model. Very nice. So now we have those capabilities, meaning I can come down here now. This doesn't work anymore. However, indeed, if I say microphone.set, look at that. I can set color, set model, set name. Beautiful. So I can set the model to be an integer because we set it so. Where is it? Set model. There we go. There's that model. You pass the integer. Very good. So let's see, 87. I can go ahead and say microphone.set name even. In this case, new blue Yeti. Look at that. So I can override whatever we set the first instance using the constructor. All right. And I can say microphone.set, what did I say? Model, set name. Let's set the color. A string that we need to pass here. The color is going to be red, blue, if there's such thing. Very good. Now, if I want to see at a later time, okay, what is the model now of our microphone after we have actually created the microphone? Because this first instance here, it has this one. Now, here I'm going to override, so it should see 87 and show 87. So I can say now, sout, new mic, and I'm going to say plus Look at this, microphone.get. What do I want? Model, like this. Look how simple and easy this is now. I no longer say microphone.model, which is a big no-no because remember, we've changed purposely this to be all private. So anytime we want to access anything, we have to go through the setters and getters. That's the only way. Hence, they are all public. Because if they're public, that means they can be seen outside, right? That is the interface that we have added now. Save this and give it a quick run. We should see a new mic. Oh, there we go. My name, new blue Yeti with color red, blue, and it's model 87. Perfect. There we go. And we can see that also we ran here, new mic 87. So this is what we said to show here. This other one here is now showing that because, again, we haven't changed much, really, right? We just still the show description, still the same thing. But because now we're able to set things the proper way using those constraints that we must follow for the integrity of our class, of our system here to not collapse, we were able to set the model, set the name, and set the color. It doesn't matter what we did before, it will go ahead and overwrite whatever we set things to be when we're creating this object using our constructor. This, my friends, is the most basic but the most fundamental and the most important concept that you will ever learn when it comes to object-oriented programming. I do not exaggerate, folks. If you understand how this is working, you're set. You will understand many other languages, how things work. All right? Okay. Please do play around with this concept. Rewatch this video if you need to, and I will see you in the next one.